And a very pleasant evening to everyone here. I am Biff Kensington with my co host Ryan Sayo, and you are listening to the very first ever live stream of the Queen City Express. Quite a momentous little occasion for us. I'm very excited. Ryan, how you doing tonight, good friend?
Doing all right. How about you?
Doing good. You sound like you're ready for bed.
Just a little.
Well, we'll keep it short tonight, folks. This is not going to be a full length broadcast. It's not going to be a regular time for us either, but with the WrestleMania week approaching and everything that we have going on this coming week, we decided to hop on tonight as much to test out the equipment that we have here for the live stream as anything. We will be talking a little bit about WrestleMania momentarily, but first, I think the most important thing we should do is something that's kind of been on my mind the last couple of days, and that's to extend our condolences to Jason Solomon of the Solomon Monster Sounds Off. He's one of the podcasters that I love listening to. His mother passed away this week. She'd been battling cancer, and so he sent out a tweet letting everyone know what had happened. So just wanted to extend our condolences. If for whatever reason he ever hears this, just to let him know that he's in our thoughts and prayers. It is getting very close to WrestleMania week. We have a holiday tomorrow, actually. Easter Sunday is tomorrow. And Raw and SmackDown this week, the final two shows on the road to WrestleMania. It's getting close, Ryan. It's getting really close. You getting excited for Mania trip yet?
I've been excited.
A man of a thousand words, to be certain. We're going to be leaving on Thursday. We'll be getting down there hopefully either late Thursday evening or Friday morning. We're not planning on going to Access at this point, but we will be going to Takeover. We will be going to WrestleMania a week from tomorrow. If you joined us for our first podcast, which is available on the channel here, we recorded that on Thursday. We talked a little bit about the TakeOver card. Tonight, we're going to look a little bit more at WrestleMania itself. WrestleMania has 14 matches basically scheduled. And so what we wanted to do is just kind of set the table for next week's show, which will be coming a little bit early as well. Be looking at WrestleMania's card, all 14 matches. We're waiting on the 14th right now to be finalized on Monday. And I don't know, Ryan, if you saw this in the news, but apparently The Undertaker will be on Raw this coming Monday to set up the match that has been talked about really for the last month or so. John Cena and The Undertaker going one-on-one at WrestleMania. Just wanted to get your brief thoughts on that match. A lot of people have mixed feelings on it. I think it's a match that people wanted to see for a long time, but I also think it's a match that people are a little bit nervous about given The Undertaker's health and how he looked last year. What's your thoughts on The Undertaker coming back for another match with John Cena?
To be honest with you, I'm really excited to see The Undertaker in person. But I'm concerned with, as you mentioned, his health, and I don't want to see Biker Taker.
Yes, I think we are the only two people that feel that way, though. The impression I've gotten is that most people, they're interested in seeing the American Badass Undertaker back.
Yeah, I grew up more with the traditional Undertaker, the dead man, if you will. That's always been my favorite incarnation of his work. But to be honest, if I was watching from home, I would have little to no interest in this match. But being in person, I'd like to see him.
Well, there's a mixed bag here when we're talking about The Undertaker. You can look at it from the perspective of his performance the last couple of years. The Hell in the Cell match in Dallas was okay, but I think it was a letdown for a lot of people, especially considering the Hell in the Cell Undertaker had with Brock Lesnar. So you have that. Then you go into Orlando last year at WrestleMania 33. The match with Roman Reigns was not a very good one. It was almost embarrassing in some spots how bad The Undertaker looked in the match. And that is said with the utmost respect for what he actually did, going out there and competing in that much physical pain. I shouldn't make it sound like Undertaker just had a bad match for the sake of it. It were extenuating circumstances, not the least of which is his age, his health concerns. But we're getting now to the point where Undertaker, he's not getting any younger. He could be in better physical shape now than he was last year. I know he had a surgical procedure on his hip. Hopefully that alleviated some of the pain. What do you think is his motivation at this point? Do you think he just likes to wrestle and isn't wanting to hang it up, or do you think there could be something deeper lying under the surface here that explains why the Undertaker keeps coming back for more?
Best guess would be a mixture of enjoying wrestling, doing it for pretty much his entire life and not wanting to let it go, and at the same time, he probably doesn't want to end his career on such a bad match that he had at the last WrestleMania.
Yeah, that was a very tough note to go out on, and I think that might be playing a role in this. Undertaker does strike me as the kind of person that's a bit of a perfectionist in the ring, and so when you get a situation where he has a tough match with Roman Reigns last year, with no disrespect to Roman Mint, I think maybe the Undertaker has a vested interest in giving the fans a stronger note to go out on. Whether or not John Cena is the better candidate to help Undertaker get that great last match, that's up for debate. You could debate the merits of that point. I tend to believe that John Cena probably could get a better match out of The Undertaker. And if for no other reason, John Cena has proven that he really delivers when the lights are brightest. He has that big match John nickname for a reason. You can say what you will about how long Cena's been on top and his character, the way he's been utilized in WWE, but you can't really dispute his track record in Big Mania. He generally does a good job. Roman Reigns, he does a great job on pay-per-view, but kind of an interesting sidebar on Roman. Outside of WrestleMania 31 versus Brock Lesnar, the man he'll be facing in New Orleans next Sunday, he has not had a very good run at WrestleMania. WrestleMania 29 and WrestleMania 30 were too inoffensive and inconsequential to really matter. His match with Triple H at WrestleMania 32 and his match with The Undertaker last year were not very good. So you could argue that Roman Reigns probably needs a big match performance this year, or you could start hearing some people start some rumors about his ability to get it done at WrestleMania.
I mean, I think Roman gets a lot of bad rap for what he's done. A lot of it's not on him. It's just how far they push him. That being said, it could be a testament to me getting up there in my old age, but a lot of the times Roman Reigns comes on in the main event match, I usually end up falling asleep during his match. And I hate to say that.
I'm older than you, pal.
Yeah, well, you get what I'm saying. But it's not that he's a bad worker. They're just not giving me a reason to care about him. That's the biggest problem I've got right now with him. They tried to push him to the moon. It backfired in their face. They busted him back down to the mid-card for all of 5 minutes, gave him the Intercontinental title, took it away, and now he's back at the Universal title again. I'm tired of the super pushes for no reason.
Well, look, I think what happened with Roman Reigns in 2015, there's the confluence of issues that came up that really hurt Roman in 2015. You had Daniel Bryan, who was returning from injury. Daniel Bryan is always going to be the people's champion in that respect. He's always going to command the lion's share of the fans' adoration. He got thrown into that situation, unfortunately, and there was nothing that really could be done to avoid that other than holding Bryan out. Of course, also Roman Reigns with the Shield had a bit of a different persona than the one he wound up with as a singles competitor. And I think that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, too. As the Shield, he was kind of the silent, strong man, kind of the epic guy, the badass character, if you will, that just kind of went in and wrecked people. When he went singles competition, he really kind of shed some of that. Of course, everybody remembers the nursery rhyme promos, the characterization becoming John Cena light. That aspect of Roman Reigns evolved over time, but it was so gradual, and I think it was, too little too late. A lot of people that maybe became detractors of Roman never really gave him another chance to get on board. But at the same time, WWE has done a very bad job at protecting him, whether they script him promos that are going to get him booed, whether they put him in no-win situations. I said this before, and I'll get you to weigh in on it here, but Roman Reigns as a top guy, as the face of the company and as one of their biggest main event talents, has probably achieved more against more opposition than anyone else since Mick Foley. He's probably, given the handicaps WWE has put in his path, one of the greatest overachievers in WWE history. And I'd like to get your take on that.
I mean, it's tough to say. There's been a lot of people that have really overachieved. You've got your people like Daniel Bryan and all of that. I mean, he lost in 5 seconds at WrestleMania to Sheamus. He's done good for what he's been able to do. I think he could be a lot better place if they would just let it be more natural. It's not really his fault. And I don't have anything against the guy. He just does not excite me when he's in the ring. I don't know if it's just his lack of character, the fact that they broke up from the Shield and he basically stayed with the same Shield entrance, Shield attire, didn't change anything up like the other two did. I just don't know why they were so headstrong with him to not want to change, but it's one of those what ifs.
It's definitely a what if, a great what if to talk about. Really, Roman, I think, would have been better served if they had taken a little bit more time with him. I kind of get the sensation that they were rushing Roman a bit. They wanted him ready for WrestleMania 31, but I don't think that was the best time to do what they did. Not just because Bryan was there. I don't think the fans were given enough time to really connect with Roman Reigns as a singles competitor. We have to remember in 2014, when the Shield broke up, Roman wasn't around very long before he had the injury that put him out for most of the fall. So you lack several months between SummerSlam and Royal Rumble where Roman is not able to get out there and connect with fans. He comes back only a few weeks before the Rumble, and then he wins the Rumble, and now he's in the main event. And so there's no gradual build-up that gets fans acclimated to a new main event player. And you can argue whether or not Reigns was already a main event player because of his station in the Shield, which they were in main events, so I can understand the argument. But as a singles competitor broken away from the Shield, you had a guy that wasn't really evolving either. He still had the same basic look from the Shield days. He had the same theme song from the Shield days, and he had the same entrance. So, there wasn't really a gradualization to him that let fans warm up to him as a single star, nor did they really change him up any and give fans a reason to care about the new incarnation of Roman Reigns, moving from the heavy of the Shield into a singles role. I believe personally that it might have been better if Roman Reigns had fought Rusev for the U.S. title in Santa Clara at WrestleMania 31. And then at WrestleMania 32, make the big push for the heavyweight championship. Now, we can debate that point a little bit. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. It does take away the ability of Seth Rollins to cash in on Roman Reigns, and so you do lose that story from that perspective. But what do you think Roman should have been doing at WrestleMania 31, if not wrestling in the main event against Brock Lesnar for the championship?
Honestly, it's a tough thing for me to really say. It's not. I didn't watch a whole lot of wrestling leading up to WrestleMania 31. I really fell out of wrestling in the early 2000s and didn't start coming back around until WrestleMania 31 hit. So it's kind of hard for me to put a real good gauge on it. When I first came back to watching, it was just Roman Reigns all the time. Everything was built around him, it felt like. Everybody was complaining about it, and it could very well just been the peer pressure of it that put me in such a sour mood about him. So it's really hard for me to say. I feel like they just strapped the rocket to him too fast. He might have been better suited pushing around in the mid-card for a little bit, getting the Intercontinental title and slowly working his way up. But it's hard for me to say.
Well, Roman is definitely the most polarizing figure in WWE now. I think that goes without saying. I think he's taken that mantle from John Cena. I also, when you deal with Roman Reigns, it's hard to really have an in-depth conversation because Roman elicits such strong reactions on either end of the spectrum. One of my favorite sayings is, "It's not black or white; it's shades of gray," and I think that's true with Roman. He has things that he does really well. He has things that need to change. You can debate whether he needs to be a heel. You can debate whether he needs a slight tweak to his characterization. Some people are just going to reject him out of hand. Some people are going to defend him no matter what. So, Roman Reigns as a topic of conversation, that's a tough one, but it's also an interesting one because you have so many different perspectives. But definitely the bottom line on Roman Reigns, whether you're a fan of Romans, whether you are not a fan of Romans, he is going to be in the main event picture for a long time, barring any unforeseen event. And so it's that old chestnut. You either like him or you learn to live with him, because I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. He really does need a good match, though, in New Orleans, because 3 bad matches in a row would not look good on what traditionally for any other superstar would be an incredible resume.
I agree. He really needs to come out swinging and knock it out of the park. And as much as my criticisms of the guy are, and how much I could just really care less about that match, to be 100% honest with you, I think it's best if Roman Reigns does come out with the title. They need to get that belt back on TV to get people to care about it. Because right now, I don't know anything about the Universal title. Like, why should I even consider this to be on even terms with the world title? It feels irrelevant.
Yeah, I think that's also a separate issue that I think is on a lot of people's mind right now, is getting the Universal title back on TV. And really, if you want to break it down to the core problem of the Universal title, as a top level title, I don't think the Universal title has been established with enough credibility yet to really compete with the WWE Championship. But with the Universal title being on Raw, you get the impression that that is the title that the company wants to focus on the most. And so I think you run into a problem where the Universal Championship is considered the crown jewel of the company now, but the fans really don't buy into it at that level.
Yeah, there's no reason to. It started off strong enough with the original winner of it with Finn Balor. People really love Balor, and I'm one of those people. Then it instantly took a nosedive with him having to relinquish it less than 24 hours later. So it really came out of the gate limping right off the bat, and the fact that people really just tore the belt design apart from the word go. But, Kevin Owens had a lengthy reign with it, and it was entertaining. Losing it to Goldberg was ridiculous, in my opinion. I mean, it was fine for what it was, I guess. It was nice to see Goldberg back, but it really just set up Goldberg Lesnar, and it was just so easy to see it from a mile off. I feel like the fact that nobody has ever had a rematch for the title doesn't help it. It's one of those kind of weird things. You figure KO would have got his rematch, or Balor would have tried to come back for it, but he just got shuffled down to the mid-card, or both of them did. So it's not a good look when your former champions don't even get the chance to come back for it.
Well, you also have to consider, too, the fact that the Universal Championship is playing, catch up in a race that it's never going to win in. You're never going to supplant the WWE Championship in terms of history, prestige, what it means to the fans. A title that has been around in some iteration since 1963 versus a title that's only been introduced in the last 2 or 3 years. It's just a hard sell for a lot of people to buy. It would be one thing if they were trying to incorporate maybe the big gold belt. I don't think it would be successful then, but at least the history of the big gold belt would give it a little bit more credibility, perhaps, in the fans' eyes. But really, at the end of the day, you're just playing catch-up in a race you can't win. They're never going to match the history, the stories that have been told with that WWE Championship. The Universal Championship will get there one day if they stick with it, but that is not today. And I think that becomes a major problem for the fans, asking them to buy into this belt as the top belt in the company. And let's be quite honest, I think the image that most fans will carry, particularly online, but I think also among casual fans now, any belt that's held by Roman Reigns will probably be viewed as the top belt in the company. I just don't think there's any way around that.
I feel like it's going to come down to whichever is the top belt of Raw is going to get the. It don't matter who holds it. I feel like it's just that belt's going to be the one that people are going to say, well, that's the belt to end all belts. And that's unfortunate to me because I would rather the world title be on Raw and the Universal title get shuffled to SmackDown, to be honest with you.
Well, the good news, I guess, in that respect is that if they were to switch brands like they did during the first draft era, you can switch the Universal and the WWE Championship because their labels are not tied to specific shows. I was thinking about that the other day, whether it happened if they were to draft a champion from SmackDown over to Raw. In the women's division, let's assume, if you're looking at the champions right now, and let's say they had a draft on Monday, drafting Charlotte as the SmackDown Women's Champion over to Raw and then drafting Alexa Bliss over to SmackDown, do they just hand each other's belts over on their way out the door? I mean, do they just swap? That's kind of the problem of drafting champions in any superstar shakeup moving forward is most of the belts are brand specific now. And unless you're doing a direct trade champion for champion, it's going to be kind of awkward having the SmackDown Women's Champion defending that title on Raw. But the titles are separate with their own respective lineages, so you can't just put one championship on another. Now you're really messing with the lineage of the title. At least the top belts, the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship, can avoid that problem. But that's a mistake, I think, that they made using the company's brands as names for the titles. Makes it very hard to move your champions. So...
yeah, that's pretty unfortunate you put it that way because, you think back to the last shakeup they had, the U.S. title and Intercontinental title swapped, and it wasn't really a problem. But if you try to swap the women's titles or the tag titles, then you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, it is. It's a real difficult situation going on there. I think we could see some top-level people moving between brands coming up after WrestleMania, and one thing that has really been weighing on my mind, if the rumors are to be believed, and Asuka and Ronda Rousey are in fact the destination 5, Ronda Rousey will be competing for what we would assume to be the SmackDown Women's Championship. If Asuka is winning the title in New Orleans and holding on to that and her streak until next year's WrestleMania in New Jersey, Ronda Rousey is going to be on SmackDown. And considering the investment they've made in Ronda and how much it would seem they want her to be the face of the women's division for the company and one of their biggest stars, it's going to be quite unique to see them put her on SmackDown and have her go for the SmackDown Women's Championship when so much of the company is invested in making Raw the flagship show.
I imagine you're going to see something very similar to what they just did with Asuka. You're going to have Rousey stay on Raw for most of the year and most of next year up until WrestleMania, and then eventually just say, well, I beat everybody here, and I'm going to go take out this person on this other show that nobody else can beat. Kind of lazy booking since they just did it, and if that's the way they go, but I feel like that's probably what they're going to do.
Well, there's no telling what they could do. We're talking about angles that are going to be 6 to 12 months out at the minimum. So we have to wait and see how they work that. There's still no indication that Asuka will actually drop the title or win the title, I should say, in New Orleans. They could pull some sort of trick with the Mixed Match Challenge coming up this week, which we can talk about here momentarily. The Mixed Match Challenge has been going on. We have our finals set for this coming Tuesday night after SmackDown. It will be the team of Miz and Asuka taking on Bob Roode, and his partner Charlotte Flair, assuming she can get back from her surgery this past weekend. So, what are your thoughts on the Mixed Match Challenge? You've been following that at all?
Very loosely. I've seen a lot of clips here and there of it, mostly Braun Strowman and Alexa Bliss, who have been knocking it out of the park in the Mixed Match Challenge so far. But just looking at the matchup of the two teams, I would see probably Miz and Asuka picking up the win. Bob Roode and Charlotte, it's both are good teams, but I feel like the Miz and Asuka are going to have a little bit more going into it, and they're going to want to keep her streak alive. Even though I don't really see a tag team loss as much of a streak breaker, but people will split hairs.
Well, people are kind of upset about that match because they tied in Asuka's streak to a tag team loss, and I think that was a mistake because it hemmed in what they could do with this. It's almost a given now that Asuka and Miz will win if the intention is to leave the streak intact. Now, we could debate the merits of whether the streak should be intact. I know a lot of people have weighed in on that over the last couple of weeks. There seems to be a very polarized reaction to Asuka's streak. A lot of people don't seem to like it. There are some that defend it. I personally am one that tends to defend it. I think pitting Charlotte and Asuka at WrestleMania, strong champion, strong challenger, that's a story that writes itself. But the streak itself, I'm ambivalent towards. I could stand to see it go. I could stand to see it stay. It just depends on the story that they tell with it. But I will say this, in defense of the Mixed Match Challenge, it has become one of the more interesting parts of Tuesday nights. SmackDown has made a bit of an improvement over the last few weeks. It's been a better show. But at the same time, the Mixed Match Challenge has been a lot of fun. The superstars have been able to kind of cut loose a little bit and just enjoy themselves. But also, you know, with 205 Live and its renaissance, a very compelling little block of TV on Tuesday evenings. And so, if nothing else, Bob Roode and Charlotte Flair and taking on The Miz and Asuka, that should be an excellent match.
Well, definitely would be a great match. My only issue, kind of backpedaling to her streak and the fact they're trying to tie into, oh, she don't wasn't a loser streak in the tag matches. I mean, she's technically lost a match. She lost the Battle Royal in NXT. I know they don't want to talk about that, but she lost. If they want to specify, you know, she didn't get pinned or submitted, then that's fine. But it shouldn't matter if she loses an attack match if the Miz is the one that eats the pin.
Yeah, and I think that begs the interesting question. They never really considered the implications to the streak in the Royal Rumble that I can recall.
Right.
I don't recall anyone on commentary talking about the fact that if Asuka lost the Rumble or was eliminated, that it would constitute the end of her streak. I could be wrong. I may be forgetting something where they did mention that, but it is interesting how they didn't seem to apply that logic to Battle Royals, which, as you pointed out, she has lost in the past, but they applied the logic to the Tag Team Challenge, and I think that's really interesting that they did it that way. I don't think they would waste the streak on the Mixed Match Challenge. That feels like such a colossal waste.
No.
Unless it was done to present some level of doubt about Charlotte versus Asuka at WrestleMania.
I think it's really just them trying to use like the buzzwords and build up the hype about it, just to give it that little bit of extra something for the match itself. Because there hasn't been a big build up to Charlotte and Asuka. I mean, everybody knew it was coming since the Rumble, but they didn't really start actually hitting to it till here recently. I think it's just their way of trying to make it feel more special and bigger and all inspiring that, you know, she's got the streak. But I feel like it would have also been better if Charlotte still hadn't lost on pay-per-view. I think that would have been the more interesting of stories.
Well, that gets into the entire subject over whether or not WWE knows what they're doing half the time with the women's division. And if you listen to the Shooting the Breeze podcast earlier today from our friend Taker Minion and Dr. Senju, then you were privy to that conversation where we kind of laid out the case for the women's division and what we thought about its current state. But, you know, when you just look at the match that's scheduled, Asuka and Charlotte, that's a big match. I think it's the biggest women's title match in the history of the company. Personally, I think that's very much a subjective stance, a debatable stance even. I know there's a lot of people who are not sold on Charlotte as a face. There are a lot of people that, like I said, had problems with Asuka and her streak. But when you just take the two women at face value, Charlotte is by far one of the best female competitors in the company's history. Asuka is by far her strongest challenger. It's wrestling storytelling 101. Strong champion and strong challenger equals exciting match because you don't know who's going to win. Asuka could keep her streak alive. Charlotte maybe could win because Charlotte has that pedigree, that legacy that she's building with the company right now. So it's an interesting story, and I'm very excited to see how that plays out.
I mean, end of the day, knowing this company, Carmella could cash in and kick Asuka in the face and pin her.
Oh, you talk about lighting the internet on fire. That would chafe some butts, let me tell you right now. Well, Ryan, we're just about out of time. It's a very short episode tonight, but we're going to go ahead and call it here momentarily. Just want to keep on the schedule for this coming week. I've got a couple of guest appearances that I'll have lined up. I will be back on the air later tonight for a special last call edition of the Queen City Express. I'll be flying solo because poor Ryan is going to be asleep. He's got work tomorrow, so you pray for him and his sanity. We will be coming back with you later this week before we leave for New Orleans to do our official WrestleMania preview show. Not sure yet if that's going to be taped or going to be a live stream. I guess it depends on how this sounds in hindsight, but we're very much looking forward to that. We will be back at a regularly scheduled time the week after WrestleMania. We'll give you more information in the days to come about when to expect the podcast moving forward. We also have some special guests that'll be joining us in the weeks to come also. So it's a very exciting time. I know we're just getting started, but the response, the feedback has been really great. I appreciate all the kind words from everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Ryan, my friend, thanks you for hanging out with me tonight. Thanks for talking some wrestling, bud.
And thanks to you and everybody else for putting up with me.
And put up with you we will, because you're the co-host of the Queen City Express, the real deal in podcasting. Guys, if I don't see you later tonight, have a wonderful Easter holiday. We'll see you back next week for WrestleMania week. Otherwise, I'll see you tonight at Last Call. Have a good one, guys.